Well, today is going to be a really fun podcast because we get to meet a friend I made back in 2017 who has the same interest as me, aging and longevity. And we're going to talk to David Harry Stewart. And I can't honestly even remember how I met David in the first place, but I do remember dropping into his apartment / studio in the Los Angeles Arts District to take photographs of my family for an interview he did with my husband, Frank. And ironically, he was more interested in Frank, maybe because I was still only 47 and not qualified yet for a spot in Ageist, which is a modern lifestyle magazine David founded that is geared for people over 50. And actually, David was interested in Frank's perspective on life and the alternative way we are living it. And Frank was already 57, and David wanted to share Frank's story of leaving a great job at the peak of his career and to create his own startup and then sell all the assets to live a minimalist life. Why in the world would anyone do that and risk everything? And these are the kind of people who David shares on Ageist and now his podcast, Superage. People who are in midlife, those people who are reinventing themselves. And some of them are superstars and some are just ordinary people like you and me. And every single one of them has an inspiring story. And we both have evolved since I met David. I am now 52 with my own online business and a podcast and just completed a master's of gerontology. So maybe now I'm qualified to be a part of the tribe. And David is now in his 60s with a ton of interviews and knowledge under his belt since we first met. And he has since left LA and moved on to Park City, Utah for a more natural environment. And he has reinvented himself too, from photographer to entrepreneur and influencer. And he has dropped into the biohacking space and discovered many of the cool things that we talk about here on Hack My Age. So he's totally on it. And David is the go-to reference on people in our age group. And he shares his expertise with major media publications like the Wall Street Journal and CNN and Forbes. And he even has a great TED Talk you should all check out, which I'll include for you guys in the show notes. So now I'll shut my trap and we can all meet David Harry Stewart. Welcome.
Hey, good to be here. And Zora, congratulations on reaching a respectable age. This is wonderful.
Yes, I couldn't wait to be 50. I was like, gosh, come on, hurry up. Like, I want to be in that club. So I was really, really happy. And yeah, so it's been great. It's been so far so good. It's been amazing what we can do in our 50s. So many wonderful things that you share and I both share on our podcasts. And I remember when I first interviewed on a Skype call back in 2018, it was one of my first YouTube videos. And that was that first nudge into going towards podcasting. And in that conversation, we talked about so many things. And I'm excited to see if you've changed your perspective anyway since then. And personally, I think we both have really evolved since then. But before we start, I want you to tell people, what is Ageist? What do they need to know to understand what this is all about?
Yeah, thank you for that. What we are is we tend to promote the inspirational, the aspirational, and the attainable around people our age. So people over 50. I think we have had somebody like 49 once in a while. Oh. We've had people as old as 100. Yeah. Once in a while, we sort of break the rule, but it's generally people over 50. And, how are they living this vivid, vital, forward-looking life that perhaps was not really thought about, maybe 20, 30, 50 years ago? It's a different thing now. So we talk about that. And we don't say that everyone should live like this. We're just saying it's on the menu. You can, if you want to. And if you want to, here's the 360 ecosystem around that. We can show you how to do that.
That's a great way to explain it. I love that you said it's on the menu. It's an option because there's so many ways to live your life. And there's so much diversity with older adults. I think even much more than younger people, right?
Absolutely.
So it's, and it is inspiring. It's something that hasn't been on the menu, I think, ever, or for a very long time. So I appreciate that. But so tell us, now that you have Ageist, this is, everybody can go on there, check out the website, read the blogs, great articles. I really like the newsletter. The newsletter is, I think, one of your most popular things. I meet people all the time who say, "Oh, I subscribe to the newsletter. I love that." And most people don't like newsletters. Like throw them out. It's clogging up my email box, but yours is really great. But now you decided to start a podcast, the Superage podcast. Why is that, and how does that complement the website, the mission?
Well, it's a little different. So the Superage podcast tends to be more sort of sciencey, medical health oriented, and it's another, we like to go where our people are. So some people don't like to read. Some people just like to listen. So if you're in a car, you know, this works out better. It's another channel. It's another way for us to communicate to people. And, I'm very much of the opinion that people's behavior, their aspirations, their ambitions all sit on top of, guess what, their bodies. And your perception of your physicality is going to determine how you behave in the future. And if you feel you can live healthier and more vitally, you're actually going to cause that to happen. So that's why we tend to really talk a lot about that, because I think that's really the foundational part of all of this.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So since I became a gerontologist, I've really been exposed to that world of ageism. And because you named your business Ageist, I remember asking you, like, why did you name it Ageist? Like, that just sounds, like I'm a part of being ageist. But I don't think I really realized back then what really were the consequences and the issues that have surrounded it. And it's not just like personal experience and someone feeling offended or not having a job opportunity, but it's more important how this touches society and economies as a whole. And I was really shocked what I learned since then. And in case anyone is unclear about what is ageism, this is the stereotyping and the prejudice or discrimination based on age, young and old, right? But it very often happens more with older people. And when I talk about ageism, some people roll their eyes and they go, "Oh yeah, great, another ism is all we need." And those are usually younger people. And I don't think they understand the wider implications of this ism, which in my opinion is the worst ism, because it's so rampant and it's so widely accepted. It's so okay with so many people, and who are not the targets of this ism mostly. And with your business and your decades of experience as a photographer, you're someone who's really involved in the media. And even now, even more so. So what are some of these wider implications of ageism and ageist stereotypes that we have in media?
Well, if you say you just you're looking at people over 50, so that's about somewhere like a third to depending on the country, half of the population. What are the economic consequences of marginalizing those people? Well, that's not going to work out so well. No, not to mention the intellectual capital, and the effect on the individual. So if you're somewhere and you're constantly being told that you are a problem in need of a solution, that you are less than, you are incapacitated in some way, well, that's horrible. Imagine if you did that to a specific race or a gender or anything else, how we would feel about that. That's really bad. So, but it's worse because unless you die, you're going to get older and you're going to be part of this gang. So You know, I'm amused by young people who say these sort of things. I often, depending on how belligerent I feel, I say, well, we feel the same way about you. You know, once you grow up and learn a little bit, we'll talk again. You know, I never say that. I love young people, but you know, it goes both ways. And I think that it's a super complicated thing because it's sort of built, there's this sort of fear of mortality, health consequences. There is decline at the age, you know, towards the end of life, and people's brains, as you've studied this, they function differently at this age than they do at 20. It's not better or worse. It's just sort of a different channel. And if it's only 22-year-olds, you know, tech bros, you get, you know, they end up in the ditch. They get there quickly, but it's in the ditch.
Yeah.
So, you know, I strongly feel that the most vibrant sort of ecosystem is a diverse ecosystem. So if you have a monoculture, and that's culturally, age-wise, you know, whatever, you're going to sort of get this sort of groupthink that will pull you into not such a great place. It's much better to have a lot of different people from different backgrounds, including different ages, talking about different things. It's, you know, if we look in nature, if you have a field that's just one strain of wheat, if something bad goes on, the whole field's gone. But if you have sort of, you know, if you go into like an uncultivated field just in the wild, like whatever, you got like 10,000 species of plants in there. So one goes, whatever.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think, do you know Dr. Becca Levy and her book, Breaking the Age Code? So we studied a lot about her research, and she was incredible in the sense that her research was all based on a model that's explains how people form ageist attitudes as young as age 6 or maybe 5. They see how their parents are treating their parents or grandparents or older adults, and they start to formulate these ideas and they acquire them. This is sort of the acquisition phase. And then once they hit maybe their 40s, 50s, they see their first wrinkle, gray hair, they start to feel tired. And they go, oh, this is what aging is about. And they start to internalize this. Not necessarily. Like, obviously, if you are having a bad day, you're tired, fine. You don't go, oh, I'm getting old, this must be normal. And then you start to walk slower and have the shuffle walk, or you don't want to embrace this, but this is what's happening. People are internalizing this. And so they're aging a little bit too early, and then they reinforce this into society for other people to see. And I think what's happening is there's a lot of health implications that are happening because of this. People are getting sick faster just because of the thoughts in their head, or the comment that somebody made to them when they tripped and fell. And they're like, oh, well, old people shouldn't be walking around, or you shouldn't be, I don't know, this is a senior moment, or these kinds of things are really ridiculous because they don't have anything to do with older adults, in my opinion. I mean, you can trip and fall at any age. You probably fall a lot more when you're learning how to walk than you're an older person. And, you know, senior moment, like that, to me, that I remember when I was pregnant and I had baby brain. Okay, we'll call it baby brain. And I was in my 20s. We'll call it senior moment. So all these things are really having, but the problem is that it does, people are having really negative health outcomes simply because of this ageist attitude that people have. And by changing that, we can actually get people healthier and have less of an impact, or, you know, not be a burden, quote unquote, on society and our medical resources as well. There's just so much. And then the other side, which I think you've discovered as well too, is like, wow, if we are 50% of the population, people over 50 more or less, then what an opportunity to sell people things and services. Like, we need stuff. Like, if you're a business person not looking at this demographic, you're losing out on a lot of money. And that's in addition to, like you said, all the skills, the amazing things that older adults have that we're just throwing out the window, firing somebody just because they reached a certain age. So those are, I think, some of the more important, wider implications that I think a lot of people don't realize. And that's why when people tell me, oh, you look good for your age, like, why did you have to say that for your age stuff? You just say, I look good, period. Right? Has anybody ever said that to you?
Yeah, I think it's once again, if you just plug in a race into that, like, oh, you're pretty clever for a white person, that doesn't sound very good, does it? So I think that, to me, you don't change this stuff with like regulations or rules or stuff. The way, first, culture must move. When culture moves, then regulations and policy and all this stuff follows. That stuff doesn't lead, and it can't lead. And what moves culture is story. People say, oh, you're fighting ageism. I said, no, I'm not fighting anything. If you fight something, you just amplify it. So what we do is we just say, here's some examples of another way that people are. And so we use story, and probably the most powerful part of story is the visual. What does it look like? And that's probably one of the, as you sort of touched on, the biggest differences between people who are our age and people who are younger is how we look. We look different. So, okay. But that doesn't mean that you can look cool. That's the other thing we do, is we just, we do cool, essentially. And half of my readers are under 50, and like a quarter of them are under 30. Why? Because we do that sort of inspirational, aspirational, attainable, and we do cool. So like cool, like that's the world that I come out of, right? So if you're selling sneakers to a 20-year-old, just do it cool, right? But what people seem to forget is that cool works up and down the age column. That if you're doing that, and that's sort of the big fear of the advertisers and the marketers and stuff. It's like, oh, well, we might lose our target consumer. Well, no, you won't. Like, you do it right, everybody's like, oh yeah, I want to be that. That's great. I want that. So anyway, yeah, you're correct.
Do cool. Yeah, that's what we gotta
Just do cool.
Showing, people what is cool. Whether and like you said, it's on the menu. It may not appeal to everyone, but it's an option that we didn't have before. And I think that makes a really big impact on our attitudes about aging and our beliefs about aging. It's your attitudes and your beliefs will determine certain outcomes, health outcomes, and how long you live and all that. So it's in Becca Levy's research, she shows that having a positive attitude towards aging may actually help you live 7.5 years longer, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's like what I said. If you believe this can happen, you will behave in a way to cause it to happen. If you don't believe it's going to happen, you can join Jimmy Buffett and drink yourself to death down in Florida. You want to do that? Hey, have at it. But you can do this other thing. Like we're telling people, you can do this. It requires effort. It's hard, but it's not impossible. Like it's not that hard.
It's not, I think, like you said, it's in your head. I've been thinking a lot. I'm thinking, gosh, aging is like an extreme sport. Like it's not for the pussies. It's not for those wimps. Like you got to work a little harder, I think. And then you did when you were younger in certain ways.
I think it's the same. I think we just forget. Like,
No, things came a little bit easier for me. At least women, we had a little bit easier time than we do when we get older. The hormones have a lot to do with it.
I think especially now, I think being a teenager is really, really hard. I think going to college, like at least for me, was really hard. But we sort of forget that as we get older, we get, we target comfort. And we think that is our due. We've been around long enough. I want the softest thing. I want the biggest, tastiest food. Please don't. I really don't want to put all this effort out. But we forget when we were younger, that's what we did. Like, we really were accustomed to uncomfortability and effort and pushing forward. And then over the decades, we get like, oh, well, I don't know. Like, do I really want to get off the sofa? That might, should I go to the gym? Wow, that's going to be uncomfortable. Well, yeah, but that's the way it is. It's okay.
Yeah.
We can do this,
You're right. Certain things get easier, certain things get harder, but that's just life, right?
That's life, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Nobody said life was going to be easy. That wasn't the deal.
Oh my gosh, you're right. So, okay, let's talk about Superage, your podcast. Like, you've interviewed, I don't know, hundreds of people, and you've written articles about them. You've gone real deep. You took photographs of them, and now you're bringing them, more to life with the Superage podcast, right? And my question is, are you seeing any sex differences, like male versus female, on a guest's take on aging that you're seeing when you're interviewing them? Like, women maybe look at aging and what does she do along the journey versus a man. Differences?
Not so much in the podcast, but with the people that we've interviewed for Superage and then with the social community, there is a huge, huge difference. And it's not what people think it is. And I get a lot of pushback about this. The men are a special needs disaster area. They're just like, it's just like, they're in a lot of trouble. The women, on the other hand, are kicking butt. They're the ones that are starting the businesses. They're leading the organizations. They're out front. They're joining things. If I do an event, if I have 300 people, 270 of them would be women.
Wow.
Guaranteed. All of the interaction, it's like 90% female. And the men, it's very difficult to reach them. And it sort of flies in, like, and I've said this at big conferences, and I get a lot of like, oh, well, that's can't be the case. And I understand that, based on a lifetime of sexism, why one would think that, or that, women are valued on their looks, and if their looks change, well, then they're feeling invisible. I say to that, feelings are not facts. You may feel that way, but like, I got the data on this. I can show it to you. And if it's manifested in, the health statistics. Women live longer. The rate of male suicide over 60 it's like tenfold that of women. So what's up with that? So the women tend to, you think about it, if you're a mom and you've run a business, this is a lot of like multitasking and empathy and leadership that you have to display to like make all that happen. And then now your kids are out of the house. So you've got all this extra like capacity that and I hear this all the time. It's like, from women friends of mine, they'll, at sort of a certain age, they're like, yeah, game on. It's my time. Let's go like do this thing. And the men are like, what's on the NFL tonight?
Interesting. I'm wondering if that's because you are in the circle of health and wellness, because women are generally more health minded. We've always been the caretaker, quote unquote, and looking at health data, going to the doctor before men. We're the ones who would encourage our husbands to go to the doctor because they never go. I'm wondering if it's just they're more proactive in that health space.
It's more than that. Women are more communicative. They're more community oriented. They tend to be more curious, more open to new things. If you have whatever kind of product or service you've got, if you have a new thing, I can tell you right now, the women are who you want to talk to, because the men are not really keen on anything new. The women are like, oh, well, let's look at this. Let's see this. That it's a very different thing. The way that I think it's like the hard wiring. And it's this hard wiring that leads to the health outcomes. I don't think it's directly health oriented, but it's this other sort of there's a basic gender difference. Like men are driven to achieve at higher and higher levels, and then what happens is they reach a point where that is unsustainable. You know, you're not going to be president. Okay. And so now it's sort of a downward slope. And so that isn't often received so well. But the women are not as wired that way. They're more like, they're more community centered. They're more communication oriented. They're much more emotive. And that serves them very well in this age group.
That's our oxytocin superpower.
Yeah, exactly.
We got a lot more of it than you do.
Exactly. You know? Yeah.
Said tend and befriend, you know, protection. It's all goes down to hormones. So, okay. But you are also an inspiring example. You're 63 and you're showing what it's like to be 63 today, which is really different from our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation. So, and it's not the new 40 or 50. I hate that. It's just being 63 in 2022, right? This is what I love. You are showing it, and I am, and everybody else who's aging and taking care of their health are pretty much showing some really great stuff. But I want to know, what are your 3 tips on how to super age?
Okay, there are 4 things actually, and they go together.
Okay.
So it's sort of like, if you think of like a Venn diagram, and they all overlap. So you need to have all 4 of these things happening. So the first is you got to sleep. If you're not sleeping, like, figure it out. There's whatever you got to do, go to sleep. The other thing is, what are you eating? What is going into your mouth? And by the way, all of these things are fully under your control. These are not acts of God. You decide what goes into your mouth and what doesn't, and it will have an effect. So I don't prescribe diets or any of that. Everyone is, very, what's your activity level and all, DNA and all that stuff. But nutrition, number 2. Number 3, move. You need to move your body. 2 elements to that: the aerobic and strength training. So you got to do that. And the last one is probably the most important, which is stress. So you need to have a program to deal with stress on a daily basis. Stress is an epigenetic signaler. It will cause all kinds of things to happen. And so those are the 4 things. Like, if you got those 4 things right, that's 95% of it. It's not about the, eat the vitamin, take the pill, do the whatever. You got to get all that stuff locked in. And that's most of it.
Yeah. I'm so glad you started with sleep. That was in the longevity master plan. Is that online program I created, and I started with sleep, but it's so tied in with stress. Right? And those 2, like you said, they all 4 go together, and the stress
all
and
goes,
sleep.
Yeah.
If you're stressed out, you're not sleeping. So that's why you got to everyone has to figure out what is it that's going to help them sleep.
You're not exercising, you're not sleeping, you're stressed. You're eating crappy food. You're also, it all sort of goes together as a whole.
Yeah. So tell us then what you do to combat those things. I know if anybody's listening to David's podcast, or if not, just go to the Superage podcast. You have a whole routine. You give the whole routine, like exactly what you do from when you wake up to when you go to bed. So you get the whole thing there, but give us in a nutshell, like, how are you hitting all of those in a day?
I do all that. I walk the talk. Like, I don't make this stuff up. I spend a lot of focus on sleep. I wear a sleep tracker. And my sleep efficiency is somewhere between like 90 and 95. So like the average American is more like 75.
Yeah.
But if you can sleep 95, it's great. So, I make that a real focus. I consciously move, which is what I call exercise, 6 days a week, because, and it's just like, that's what I do. I just get up and I go do this thing. And if you do that consistently, you can make enormous changes in your physiology. It's not going to happen in a week. It's not going to happen in a month, but over the course of a year, you can. I'm very, like food. I think maybe something we said earlier, like food is not there for your amusement.
Yes.
It can be.
You said in our first
it is medicine.
Food is not for fun.
Food is not for fun. Food is not, go to the movies if you want fun. Stay away from the Twinkies. It's not fun. And I try and meditate. The stress thing is the hardest thing for me. And I'm now sort of brought in the afternoon. I'll do like 15 minutes of this. I think it's called neuro yoga. It's just sort of like body awareness stuff to sort of bring the stress level down. I do breathing stuff. I meditate in the morning. I meditate at night. I'm pretty cranked up human, and so it's that this is really hard for me. You want me to pick up stupid heavy stuff in the gym? Oh, I can do that all day long, but like calm down, that's harder.
Yeah, it's so much like stress is the biggest one. I have to say, everybody I've interviewed, no matter if they're selling some kind of peptide or some other program that they're on, they all kind of wind down to say, you know what, it boils down to stress. I could sell you the best XYZ or treatment. If you're stressed, like it won't work. You can go run the treadmill all day long, lift heavy stuff all day and eat your broccoli. And if you're stressed, it still has a much bigger impact. And I agree.
I want to say something about stress too.
Yeah.
There are two kinds of stress. And I think it's really important to discriminate this.
Yes.
So good stress is sort of periodic challenge. So this is like, you want to learn a language. That's hard. It's stressful. You're going to go to the gym and you're going to lift weight. That's stressful. Okay. Like learning new things, moving out of the world, challenge, all these things are stressful. That's good. If you're not stressing on that level, there's no, hormetic adaptation. Yeah, and you're going to decline. So you need that kind of stress, that sort of stimulation. You're walking to a party and there's all these new people. You don't know them. Stressful. But it's a temporary stress. It's and it causes a hormetic adaptation in some way. You learn something, you get stronger, something happens. This is good. The other kind of stress is chronic stress. This is stuff like financial stress, and it's actually the little stuff, Zora. It's like in the back of my head, it's like, oh, there's like a rip in the screen door. Oh, when am I going to fix the rip in the screen door? And it's like agitates. And I tell people like, yeah, okay, this stuff is within your power. Just fix it. Just fix it. And you're not going to worry about it anymore. It doesn't have to be there. And so anyway, there are these sort of two things. And I think that people confuse them and they think, oh, no stress means no stimulation. Oh, that's going to be stressful. I can't do that. No. We're talking about two different animals here.
Exactly. I love the explanation of hormesis, and in the sense that it's those stressors that in large doses would kill you, but in small doses create that adaptation and actually help us.
That's what we want. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you explained that. And the same thing, actually, when you think about a deadline at work, right? If you didn't have deadlines, then we'll probably never get anything done. So it's a stress, but if you that's why you have that U curve, right? We want to have that sweet spot with just a little bit, enough stress to get us where we want to be. So I really like that. I heard you were also doing brain tap. Does that help with the stress?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I use. I started using that. I don't know. It was like a year or two ago.
Yeah. I heard you on a podcast and you were quite excited about that. Yeah.
It's really interesting. So that I learned about that, not directly, but through my buddy Rudy Tanzi, who's he's head of neurology at Mass General, He's the one who, like, I don't know, he's like 22 and he discovered the early onset Alzheimer's gene.
Mm-hmm.
Rudy's a very bright puppy. He's a very smart guy. And so we were talking, and somehow it came up. He's like, "Oh yeah, there's this thing with the light and the sounds and the what are they called? There's I don't know. There's like two kinds of tones that will sort of change your brainwaves." And he's like, "Yeah, we made this prototype thing," and he was telling me about it. He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Does it work?" He says, "Yeah, yeah." Rudy in his spare time plays organ with Aerosmith and Joe Perry.
Wow.
He's a fascinating guy. And he was telling me that, like, he was with Johnny Depp during Johnny Depp's divorce, and Johnny wasn't sleeping so well. And they put this like contraption on him. And he said, like, in a few minutes, Johnny was like out and drooling, just like, and I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And then so what happened was, like, a month later, Patrick Porter, who developed BrainTap, he sort of came into my field, and I was like, "Oh, this thing, Rudy told me about this thing." And he had, Dr. Porter had actually made the thing. And yeah, I used it 10 minutes before we came on the call.
Oh, wow. Okay. I haven't tried it yet. I mean, no, actually, no, I did try it. I borrowed it from a friend. And really interesting. Was that binaural beats that are going through there?
Yeah,
Or
so there's
they're
binaural beats, there's light,
Yeah.
and then there's this other sort of underlying tone, and I forget the name. It's like a chronic tone or something. There's some other, like, there are two kinds of sound that are happening, and then there's the light.
Yeah. Have you tried Newcom?
Sounds like a drug. No.
Newcom. No. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, you already have the BrainTap, but I do Newcom, which is neuroacoustics with some biotechnology and this little sticker that you wear, and it's quite interesting. Actually, to me, it's an amazing technology, but I think I just don't know the difference between BrainTap and BrainTap and the Newcom. But I think either way, like, I think these little gadgets help people with the stress in the sense that they've invested in something, either bought the technology or the app or whatever it is, and they feel they need to use it, right? So it kind of forces you into this doing the meditation. Of course, meditation is free, and do whatever you do. There's so many free things out there, but I think sometimes people like to have that thing that just forces them. It's like keeping them accountable to doing whatever it is that they need.
I'm one of these people, like, I'm very highly, there's a lot of metrics in my world. So I can tell, does XYZ gadget work or not? Somebody just sent me this like vibrating thing, this neuro thing. So I got that 2 days ago, and they're like, "Okay, you got to do it like 3 hours a day for like so many days." And so every morning I check my my heart rate variability and my resting heart rate. So, like, they're like, "You will see a change." It's like, okay, well, we'll see. So with like the BrainTap, my sleep efficiency went up. So it's like, okay, that works. I mean, it works on me. I'm not saying it's going to work on anybody else.
Yeah,
but it works on me.
Yeah, that's cool. I like it when we can track things. So what sleep tracker do you use?
I wear a Whoop because I think there's a lot of them out there. At one point, Zora, I had 5 of them on me. I put all 5 of them on me, and it's like, okay, let's see what's going on here. So any of those trackers, the first thing is all of their activity is just some mythology they make up. It has there's no accuracy, even with the Whoop. The Whoop takes in something like 10,000 times as much information. So it's much more granular. And the Aura Ring, my knuckle is a little big. And so the Aura Ring, for it to work, it has to get really good closure on that lower part of your finger, because they work optically. So the Aura doesn't work as well on me. Apple, I don't know. So I'll tell you. So the sleep tracker I use is a Whoop. I don't look at the HRV on a Whoop, because also it's like this weird algorithm average of the night. I have no idea what that means. So I have a special device. Joel Jameson, who's the conditioning trainer, sells a thing called a Morpheus. So every morning before I get out of bed, I just put the Morpheus on, and it's like, okay, this is your HRV at this point in this day, every day. And then I have sort of a steady metric I can look at.
Yeah, because I'm sure you've noticed, unlike you, this is anyone in the biohacking space wears like a billion gadgets, and then they're all different. And you're like, wait a second, how can my steps be this and that? And everything's different. So what I say when people wear these gadgets, like choose one and then just look at trends. None of this stuff is super accurate, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Who knows? But when you look at trends, it kind of resonates. You're like, yeah, I've been falling off the bandwagon. That makes sense. Or, oh, I've been really taking care of my health, and you're getting all these greens, and makes sense. So I agree.
Just word of caution with those things, they will tell you how many calories you're burning in a day. They're just making it up. There is no relationship. It's like plus, like it's like orders of magnitude. So that's where people get into trouble. They're like, oh, I went to the gym and I burned 1,200 calories, so it's Big Mac time. No, you didn't.
I know. And if anybody's still counting calories, then okay, got to go find something else. But it's so inaccurate. But another word of caution with these gadgets, I always tell my clients as well, as when they get on these things, is don't take them for face value. It's like a scale, the same thing. If you have trouble because you see a number and you're going to ruin your day, whether it's true or not true, you got to put it down, because you have to take it with a grain of salt. But some people, it's motivating, and some people not. I mean, that's why it's all kind of individual.
It's different. I weigh myself every morning, because I sort of want to know. And what I've learned is my weight varies about 6 pounds, depending on but I didn't get gain or lose. Like my body mass didn't change.
Your clothes still fit.
Everything's the same. So I sort of know that's sort of the window. And there are some people, though, that, as you said, this is not a good idea. So for some people, weighing themselves or having any of these metrics, it's a stressor. For me, it's just informational. It's like, oh, okay, this is what the numbers say. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, and you can test things. Like I test if I'm taking a new supplement or to help me sleep or whatever, I like to kind of measure that. Are you taking any supplements at all? Speaking of supplements.
Oh God, we're going to go down that rabbit hole. There's, I mean, and it sort of varies, depending on what I learn, where I'm at. I've been really focusing on the sleep lately. So I have sort of a whole sleep protocol that I do. So, some magnesium glycinate. I did theanine for a little while, but I really my dreams became like Disney World. Like, wow, I can't do that.
5-HTP does that to you.
Yeah, say 5-HTP sort of knocks me out too much. I get really dumb the next day, so I don't do that. I sort of like the melatonin thing. I sort of go. I take really tiny doses of it because I know people who take like 10 milligrams or 50 milligrams. Like, oh my God.
Ben Greenfield does 700. Like, that's crazy.
I mean, anything over I take 300 micrograms. So once you get close to like a gram, then I'm messed up for like a day or two. So I don't do that.
You can try to go outside in the sunlight. Sometimes that resets the circadian rhythm, and then if you're feeling a little no, but it's not Southern California sunshine that you have there in Park City, but still seeing that light helps. It's a hack you can try if you're feeling groggy. If you're taking melatonin,
right,
and you're feeling really groggy, some people just get it reset the moment they go outside. So I would say just go outside first thing, and then get on with your day. Don't hang around.
Yeah, that's a great jet lag trick. Use the light. So what else do I take? I take I like to keep my vitamin D level. I'm like really big on measuring, so I do my blood work with Inside Tracker like every 3 months, and I like to keep my vitamin D level over 50. So for me and me only, this is not medical advice. I have to take 10,000 IUs a day to make that happen. So when I was taking to get it above, when I started reading it was about 30, and then I would take 5,000, and that got it to like 38, and it was like, oh, okay, so let's do 10 and see what happens, and that keeps it around 50. So I think that's really important. I take omegas. I take an NAD product, and I'm 50-50 on the whole NAD story, but
yeah. What NAD thing are you taking? A precursor? What are you doing?
yeah. So I take nicotine riboside, which is NR, and I take it in a product with tesbotuline, which seems to have a multiplicative effect of it. Resveratrol. If anybody's taking resveratrol, just Google resveratrol, and the pharma company that paid $700 million for it spent another $100 million trying to see if it worked, and then they lost $800 million on it because no, it doesn't work.
So, and you still take it?
No, I don't take that stuff.
Oh, I thought you said resveratrol. Okay.
No, I don't take resveratrol. So,
okay.
I take tesbotuline, which is sort of in the same family, and seems my buddies at the Cleveland clinics tell me that it has sort of a multiplicative effect on these NAD precursors. So I do that. I take. Rudy told me to take something called Percepta, which is something that he makes, which he's got like an Alzheimer's thing. He's got an organoid in a dish, and so he tests tens of thousands of things, and he's like, this one works. So
what is it?
It's called Percepta.
I haven't heard of that one yet.
Yeah, it's based on cat's claw, which is something I'd never heard of. But when Rudy tells me something works on the brain, it's like, okay, I'm in.
The brain health. Oh my gosh. Yes. So I'm on board with you in terms of testing and assessing. I mean, that's what biohackers do. We don't just go and take stuff and just go hope for the best.
Very important.
We need to know, like, whether it's tracking it through blood or urine or on your Oura rings, or just keeping a piece of paper. Like, how do I feel in the morning after this? You gotta test and assess. And so that's one thing. I agree with you. Absolutely. I'm wondering though, so have you ever tried spermidine?
I'm trying to cut down on the amount of pills I swallow in the morning.
But that's a big one.
I do. I put wheat germ on my oatmeal in the morning and walnuts. So those both have like a lot of spermidine in it, and it's like I just sort of had to like draw a line of like, last year I did this crazy thing where it was just like I was following this guy. It was called the Blueprint Project. This like, I don't know. He was like, okay, I'm a vegan. I do this. So I tried that for like a month, and it was like piles of pills and all veganism. And by the way, veganism does not work for me. I was like, after a month, I was fat, dumb, and depressed. And I was like, I gotta stop this. This isn't working. So I do that. I try, and whenever I can, to just eat whatever, just like eat the food that the thing is in, because there's, once you start pulling the little bits out, you may find that there were other bits in the food that is actually the benefit of this thing, whatever it is. So, I can't eat enough fish to get enough, omega-3. So I take omega-3s. I take vitamin C. I take a multivitamin. I think multivitamins are really, really important. But it sort of comes down to, like the test and measure, because at the end of the day, we are all N of one. And if like these studies, you'll see like this data distribution, and then the results are sort of based on a composite of this. But if you look at these data distributions, you're going to see, oh, well, there's this one way over here in the corner, there's another one over here, and there's a couple of things over here. Oh, we'll throw those out. Well, suppose you're that person. And I can guarantee on some of this, you're going to be that person on something. So the only way you figure that out is, you test. I've been, experiment. I had this like wacko problem with my toe where I have something called pernio, which is the blood vessels constrict, and then they when you get cold, and then they like all the blood goes out and it breaks these blood vessels, and you can get neuropathy. And so I've become obsessed with these vascular issues and trying to understand it. And so I've talked to a lot of performance sports people about nitric oxide, which controls this vascularity, and then what works and what doesn't. And I've got Max Testa on. We're dropping next week, and so Max has done, I think 20. He was the team doctor for 28 Tour de France's. So you want to know about like performance stuff? Max is your guy. And I asked him about this stuff, and he's like, I said, what do you do? He's like, we randomize it because we never know who's going to react to what. Like he says, forget all these studies, just forget it. They're just like a rough guide, but you got to just, and he's working with athletes. So the outcomes are either your athlete's on the podium or not. Either works or doesn't. With regular people, it's a little more complicated. And especially when you're dealing with longevity, because you can't say you're alive or you're dead. That's not really a good test. So, but it's so we look at these other markers to see like what's working.
Super important that you mentioned that, because that N of one is everything. The only person, or the most important person, is you. And does it work with you? And in my space, when we know that most tests and most research is done on men. And so does it work on a woman? I don't know, So when people ask me, well, there's this study and this, and I'm like, well, the study, I don't know. I mean, it's done on 50-year-old Finnish men, and you're a 38-year-old Asian girl. Like, I don't know. maybe not.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, a big gap we have. And in the end, we just have to, I think, look at, it doesn't mean don't look at the research, but you can, but in the end, you just got to try it without the expectations that it'll work for 100% for you. Maybe not. And then test yourself and assess and reassess.
And it's all these things are multifactorial. It's not just one thing. I'm a huge fan of statins. I know there's like a lot of statin haters out there. Don't send me hate mail. It's all right. I like to keep my LDL and my ApoB like really low, because it just makes sense to me. But for some people, if you lower that stuff too much, they have their nerves don't work as well. Like they're just like, they need enough of this in their system to make these things work. That's not the case with me. I take a baby aspirin in the morning, and I take another one at night.
And CoQ10, please tell me you're taking CoQ10.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I take 200 milligrams of CoQ10. But again, all these things are multifactorial. And I think that I'm very cautious of people who say like, oh, you must do whatever. And they're looking at like sort of a single outcome. But like, we're super complicated. There's just all this stuff going on. And if you move one lever in one way, you're not really sure what other things are going to happen. I try, and the things that I take are things that, to my knowledge, do not have negative outcomes. So I'm, as we talked earlier, so I ski fast, I'm doing ski racing. So some of these things, I've been very careful talking to my physicians about blood clotting, because I don't want to die of a cerebral hemorrhage. So, so we test my clotting rate. It's like, and it's okay. So, all right. So I'm going to keep doing this.
Yeah, so good. I'm so glad you're doing that. More people need to be aware of just knowing themselves, knowing their body, knowing and
Personal
testing whatever it
responsibility.
is that they're taking or doing.
Yeah.
So, okay. One last question, and then I'll open up the mics to everybody else. In our interview, when I talked to you, not a Skype call in 2018, I asked you what is the one thing that you do every day that makes the biggest impact on your health. Do you remember what that was?
No, it's 5 years ago. I can't remember what I did this morning. What did I say?
It was meditation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's probably right.
What would
That's
you say now?
probably, yeah, no, I think that's still it. Yeah. If you, again, you can't just do one thing. You got to do sort of do all the
Yeah,
things.
I know.
But
People want that one magic bullet, right?
yeah, I'm
If there's
sorry,
one thing they
Neo. It's
can
not the
do.
red pill or the blue pill. Where it's not like that here. I think meditation is an incredibly powerful thing. And I would still go with that. Yeah.
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 Okay. Everybody get on their meditation, get it on. But I think I agree with you 100%. It's really a multifactorial approach to aging. It's never just one thing, but we all want that one thing. So I want to open the mic to anyone who wants to make a comment or have a question. Maybe Leslie, you have to unmute.
Hi there, I'm Leslie Kenny, co-founder of the Oxford Longevity Project, and I'm a big fan. All of this information about how to live longer is great, but since we are living an extra 20 to 40 years, I'm curious to know what you think about how our social relationships are changing. I look at Alan Tipper Gore and I look at studies from London Business School about people saying, okay, first 30 years with one person, next 30 years with someone to help me raise the kids, next 30 years, somebody else. And then these communities are springing up for intergenerational living. And I'm sure both of you know all about this. So just put me on the fast track to how I should be living as a 57-year-old.
As a 57-year-old, I remember my data right here, but according, again, I get most of my medical stuff from the Cleveland Clinic. So what they're telling me is there is an 80% chance that you're going to live to, probably 115 or 120. Yeah. So that, the social implications of this are vast and transformative. So, financially, like economically, if 90 becomes the new 40 and you have people starting businesses and continuing economic output, like into what we would now consider advanced age, and they're also going to be consuming and they're also going to be paying taxes. So that becomes super interesting. The idea of life phases. So there's sort of like generalized, I hate systems, but there's sort of generalized, like most people in their 20s are doing one thing in their 30s, but like what happens when these life phases are also based on an expectation of mortality? So if at 60 you think you're dead at 70, you live a certain way. If at 60 you think you're dead at 120, that changes things. What does a cohort of really vital, vivid 90-year-olds or 100-year-olds look like? I have no idea. Like we've never seen this before. So I think that all of these things that you're talking about, like how do these social bonds work? How does it, and how does the relationship up generationally work when you've got a lot of people that are very healthy and contributing in these upper age brackets? How does that reverberate down? Because somebody who's 15 or 20 is going to be seeing this and thinking like, oh, I guess I'm going to live a really long time. So how does that change their trajectory going forward? If they think, oh, like even now, like people who are in their 20s, it's like, yeah, I'll do this job for a while. Maybe I'll, because they know they've got several do-overs. So I think this is super fascinating to me, Leslie. And it's something I don't really have anybody who's like, they're just, I don't know, they're fantasizing about what this could be. But I mean, we really don't know. I think it's never in human history. Like what we're doing here is we're moving the entire species lifespan forward. That has a huge effect. What those are, I don't know.
I think Frank has a question or a comment on this.
No, it was not on that, but I was wondering why, David, why did you take the limit of 50 for Ageist? I mean, really, in my world, 50 is quite, I don't want to say young, but at least there's not a big difference between 40 and 50s. And it seems that the way people talk about older people is more thinking about people in their late 60s, 70s. And so, yeah, that's the first question. And the second one was, you've been interviewing a lot of people that, I mean, you represent that potential examples, at least, did you find any parameters that across the board, for example, education, socioeconomic factors or whatever?
As expected, Frank, two very large questions. So why did I do 50? Well, I started when I was 56. So I don't know, it was just an arbitrary number. Depending on where you are, and if you're a coder in Silicon Valley, 50's pretty up there. You may, anything over 30. I think it's we just sort of picked a number, and it's an age range that, like, something I know about. So 50s and 60s is something I know about a lot. 70s, 80s, 90s, I don't know about, but I can ask other people about. So I try to keep what I talk about specific to the things that I personally know about. Your other question is like, what's the commonality? Curiosity. Curiosity is the superpower. So that's what cuts through everything. So that's, you can be very wealthy and you can have all this stuff and you're still a mess because you don't have that. That's what goes through pretty much everybody that I've interviewed, is that they are very curious people.
Interesting. So education and socioeconomic factor. I mean, have you interviewed many people less educated?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the profile of the
we
people
profiled a public gardener. It's what you'll find is curious people cause their own education. So they may not have higher degrees, they may not have gone to college, but they read a lot. And they see a lot of stuff and they're open to new things.
Yeah. When I'm talking about education, I don't, I think there's a big paradigm shift about education and the value of diploma versus knowledge. And, so that's not a question. It was just that whether, when we talk about ageism, I think, in fact, we reflect a lot of the things that we actually see in reality. I mean, we're saying people, older people are slow. Well, that's actually what we see, correct? So, and we tend to blame the younger people or the non-old people for ageism, when in fact, I wonder how, if the older population, whatever we define it, should have the wisdom and hopefully should have enough experience to change themselves, to have known or have a certain level of self-awareness to be able to change, and isn't the solution in the people changing and therefore changing the way they are perceived? Of course, it will take time and whatever, and we can say that it's very difficult for people to change because of their the way they've grown up, basically, and the education stuff. But isn't the solution to convince or educate or however older people that there is another possibility, and therefore not always, because ageism looks like we're always blaming somebody else.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you perhaps a surprising fact.
Mm-hmm.
Most ageist people are older people.
Yeah, that's the point.
Yeah. And that sounds sort of weird for me to say, but it's
No, I believe it. I
point.
believe in that. So that's the point. So that's why the notion of ageism then becomes, I mean, it's always trying to find excuses, you know?
Exactly. It's yes, it's escaping personal responsibility, and it's believing, you know, sort of what Zora was saying originally, believing things about oneself and then projecting them onto others. I don't think I get hate mail every week, and I can't think in 7 years have I gotten something from a younger person talking about an older person. But I get tons of stuff about, well, I'm 70. Why are you talking about 55-year-olds? They're nothing. Well, duh, that's ageism. You know, or, you know, it's stuff like that all the time. And part of it's a projection. Part of it's somebody just having a bad day, whatever. But absolutely, Frank, that is, and the only way that I know, like I said in the beginning, I don't fight these things. What I do is I just show examples of like, okay, this is on the menu. Add this. This may possibly expand your imagination of what's possible. It may not. Okay, whatever. But I think that, yeah, it's, you would be appalled at the email that I get around this topic.
Yeah, interesting.
Wow.
Okay, thanks.
Leslie.
I've got another question. So thinking about the fact that there's all this ageism, but from older people themselves, I want to find a place to live where I'm not going to face that, where aging is, older people are seen as vital, vibrant, contributing. And for me, being half Asian, I'm thinking maybe I should be going east.
Yeah.
And should I be looking to move to Okinawa, for instance, or should I be looking for some warm weather place where elders are respected and respected and expected to continue to contribute to society around them in an intergenerational way, right? Not in a siloed way where we're stuck in a retirement home. No, that's
a ghetto.
Horrible. Yeah, it's a ghetto. It really is a modern ghetto, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So the perceptions in the East around age are upside down from in the West. People ask me often this question of where should I go? I will say, just because you eat purple potatoes in Okinawa does not mean anything magical is going to happen to you. Different biome, just saying. But I think when I sort of analyze like where would I want to live and such, number one, you want to be 30 minutes from world-class medical. Yeah, the jungles of Panama, nice, but shit's going to happen and you want somebody around who can take care of you. So I think that's sort of number one. The other thing is, to me, you want a multi-generational situation. And that may be, you know, I know people are designing these communities and compounds around that. That's okay. I think a city seems to be like what that is. So, you know, I know a number of people who've they've moved to Manhattan for like that reason. So they can be around culture, they can be around new people, they can be around new ideas. they can, and there's medical. I think, warm weather, cold weather, I'm sort of, whatever works for you. It's more, I would think about, those are the two main levers I would look at. And I think that those overpower. I once lived in Malibu, and it was lovely. It was beautiful. And I was surrounded by crazy people. Too much money, too much time, too much crazy. I was like, And I realized then that it was not so much my view that was important. Who am I living next to? Who are the people in my area? Are they going to support, is it that sort of a thing, or is it not? So, Manhattan may not be the most sort of, place that's very supportive, but there's a lot of other elements. You may be more supportive in other communities, but I don't know. Those are the things I would look at.
Those are good.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say those are really good factors. I'm just thinking that Manhattan would completely screw up my circadian rhythm, right? There's like blue light everywhere. But maybe a university town with a world-class hospital.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of these. There's a lot of these sort of places that would fit those. I think Manhattan is probably the most extreme version of that. But there's probably like, I don't know, knock off like 150 places in the world that would satisfy that.
I'd like to make a comment on what Leslie said and add maybe a little bit of controversy here, because in your comment, what I perceived is already abdicating some level of control and not willing and not already participating to the life in general. When you think, oh, they park you in a old home. Well, nobody can park you unless you let it happen. So, I mean, the way I look at it, is I want to keep my level of control and participation in the world at large very, very, very long. And I don't anticipate moving. I mean, I move all the time, by the way, so it's not a question of not moving, but I move like I would move at 30, I want to move at 60, 70. I understand the health issues and everything, but I don't want to give in my control to anybody. And I think the problem of ageism or the old thinking is that people at the time, they say, oh, I have to plan, so when I give up my control. And well, when I reach that level, I might as well personally, die. It doesn't matter anymore, correct? So it's almost, when we think about older age and thinking already about giving control, we're almost there already. And that bothers me a lot about the thinking of people that are approaching, okay, the old age. I don't know. In my case, it's something that I certainly don't want to give up. And I want to participate in the world at large, in the cities or wherever I want to, as long as possible. Sorry if I understand it might be controversial, but that's the way I'm thinking about it.
Leslie, think about Honolulu.
Oh, I love Honolulu. Yeah.
It's for some reason, Hawaiians who eat a terrible diet live longer than any other state in America. And there's it is a very Asian city. When you go there, it's it's sort of like a cleaned up Bangkok.
And, I don't think the Thais would be happy to hear that.
Well, Bangkok's a messy place. But they've got like really good medical. So
good point.
I can add to this. So Leslie, you went to Harvard. You probably heard of this, the Harvard Study of Adult Development. Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I have. Where they take a cohort and they made them imagine it was the 1950s or something, right?
No. This is
not
one of
that
the
one, a different
longest
one.
longitudinal studies done. David, have you heard of this, or do I?
Is that with the physicians that they tracked them for like 60 years?
Well, they track them. I think they're now in the second generation. So started, I think, I want to say in the 1940s. I mean, it's pretty an old study. I don't remember exactly, but it was started by Harvard, and they were looking at Harvard students, mostly men, and they would track them throughout their lives. Every year they would ask them give them questionnaires, look at their blood work, and then eventually their DNA, and then MRI scans, and they got quite detailed about everything and looking at how these people are aging. And then eventually they added in their wives and some females as well. But what they've concluded is, in terms of what is the secret of longevity, what is the people who are surviving the longest and happiest, and ask those people, and it wasn't their cholesterol levels that were predictive of how long they would live, but it was their relationships and their social connections and their bonds, and having a healthy, happy connection with their families or friends. And that made the biggest impact on their aging and longevity. And that was kind of amazing, because, and what they did find is that when they looked at those people when they were age 50, the most predictive of their health was their relationship. So when they were 80s, those people who were having the best health were actually said when they were 50, I'm happy in my relationships. And it doesn't mean that, these guys and these women as well were, had these perfect marriages or were married at all. It doesn't mean you have to be married in a happy marriage. It just, they knew that when the shit hit the fan, someone had their back, they have a community there that supports them. And it was quite amazing. So I'm thinking, and I'm a nomad as well as Frank, you just heard, we are all over the place. And so I'm not going to cultivate these relationships when I'm in my 70s or 80s, and it takes years, if not decades, to build these relationships. So I think, Leslie, to answer your question, is I think a lot of people go where their family and friends are, where they have that support and that community and that love and that friendship and those positive relationships. I'm not talking about toxic relationships. So I don't know if that helps, but that was
it looks like I'm stuck here in gray England then.
Well, you can always take a vacation, right?
I'll come visit.
All right. David, I'm so happy you gave us your time, and really, I love what you're doing. I'm so happy I met you, and I love watching the whole progression and the success that you're having. Any last messages you would like to share with a woman over 50?
There's that Public Enemy song, "Don't Believe the Hype." And exactly, like, you can do really amazing things, and you will do really amazing things because you're going to be around for a long time. And a lot of the hype about how you look and, some of the other things about your capacity, don't believe it. Not true.
It's all your beliefs. Thank you so much, David. Everyone can find you on your website, which is Ageist, AGEIST.com. And you've got Instagram and Facebook, and I'll put everything in the show notes. I really recommend people to subscribe to your newsletter. It's fantastic. I agree with everyone else. And listen to the Superage podcast. And that's always really fun to tune in every week and hear what you're doing and who you're interviewing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.